Napoleon's mysterious death, poison or illness. In May 1821, on the remote island of Saint Helena, Europe's most famous general drew his final breath. Napoleon Bonaparte, once the Emperor of France and master of Europe's battlefields, had been exiled here after his defeat at Waterloo in 1815. Far from the political intrigue of Paris, he lived under constant watch in a damp, wind-battered home called Longwood House. At the age of 51, his health began to decline. The official cause of death recorded by the British was stomach cancer. Yet almost immediately, whispers of something more sinister began to spread. Had the British government silenced Napoleon Bonaparte for good? What really happened to him on Saint Helena? And was it murder? This is my channel. And today we are answering the extraordinary question, did Napoleon eat his last meal on Earth poisoned? It's hard to overstate Napoleon's towering presence in European history. His military victories across 2 continents made him a legend in his own time, but his ambition also made him anathema to the balance of power. When the French army he led invaded Russia in 1812, they numbered nearly 500,000 men. It was a vast campaign that would see unspeakable loss on both sides. Ultimately, Napoleon's ambition was undone by the Russian winter and a series of tactical blunders. But he remained popular with the French people. So when Louis XVIII ascended to the throne following Napoleon's abdication, he did so knowing that the former emperor had many supporters. There was no love lost between Napoleon and the ruling Bourbon dynasty. Napoleon was exiled first to the island of Elba off the Tuscan coast, and then to Saint Helena in the South Atlantic. Both exiles were intended to be temporary, but the British, who held significant sway over European politics at the time, had other ideas. They feared the re-emergence of Bonapartism in France and so exiled him permanently to the remote island of Saint Helena. Napoleon lived out his final years in a house known as Longwood House. It was a modest brick building, originally built in 1793 for the governor of the island, situated at the foot of a volcanic peak. It was surrounded by a small garden, but given the size of the estate, Napoleon's movements were restricted. During his first year on Saint Helena, he walked its grounds 20 times. Later, he was confined to a single room. The British were convinced that Napoleon might attempt escape or even assassination. To prevent this, they shackled him to his bed while he slept and sometimes woke him up by throwing cold water over him. The regimen to which he was subjected was exhausting. Napoleon wrote, "Every day at 7 a.m. the door of my bedroom is thrown open and every object in the room is examined. Everything is to be examined again at noon and 4 in the afternoon. A visit from the doctor, 2 visits from officers, 2 visits from the captain of the guards, one of whom invariably interrupts my night's rest by throwing water on me as I sleep. These repeated interruptions prevented me from sleeping. All this has a tendency to throw my stomach and bowels into disorder." The British officers tasked with watching him argued that they were only following orders and were otherwise sympathetic to Napoleon's plight. On May 1821, Napoleon ate breakfast, composed some letters and dictating sections of his memoirs. He then retired to his bedroom and went to bed. That evening, around 10 p.m., he was visited by his doctor, who found him suffering from violent stomach pains. For the next 5 days, Napoleon experienced terrible cramping, nausea and vomiting. The doctor administered medicine, but it appeared to do little. On May, at 5:45 in the morning, Napoleon's heart stopped beating. The official cause of death given by the attending physician was stomach cancer. There were rumors of foul play surrounding Napoleon's death almost immediately. The British officials in charge of Napoleon's detention sought to pour cold water on these theories. Governor Hudson Lowe declared that Napoleon had received fair treatment and that the accounts of his mistreatment were the result of a disordered mind. However, there were many who disagreed, including those close to Napoleon who insisted that he had been deliberately poisoned. Napoleon's personal valet, Dr. Barry, suggested that someone must have put poison in the food given to the ex-emperor. Others blamed the infamous green wallpaper in Napoleon's room. It was treated with arsenic-based pigments, which may have released toxic vapors given the damp climate of Saint Helena. Such speculation only intensified after forensic tests conducted in the 1960s on strands of Napoleon's preserved hair revealed unusually high levels of arsenic. The official story was dealt another blow in 1986 when the historian J. Christopher Herrold published a book titled The Poisoning of Napoleon. British officials were quick to dismiss the possibility of murder, suggesting instead that Napoleon's ill health was caused by the ulcer that resulted in his death. They pointed out that Napoleon's father died from stomach cancer at roughly the same age as Napoleon. However, critics noted that this claim ignored the fact that Napoleon's symptoms had worsened significantly since arriving in Saint Helena. Furthermore, if Napoleon was suffering from stomach cancer, why did his condition suddenly improve after 6 months on the island and only worsen again just before his death? A review of medical evidence offered a different assessment of Napoleon's condition, while the original autopsy performed by British Army surgeon Francesco Antimacchi was cursory at best. The medical notes he took during the procedure described a large ulcer in Napoleon's stomach that was consistent with stomach cancer. Another examination of the available evidence suggests that Napoleon did indeed suffer from stomach cancer. Nevertheless, this doesn't preclude the possibility that he was poisoned. Professor Geoffrey Ward, a Canadian pathologist and toxicologist, believes that Napoleon most likely died from arsenic poisoning. He points out that the amount of arsenic found in the ex-emperor's hair is consistent with chronic poisoning, not acute poisoning. He argues that Napoleon was probably poisoned inadvertently through wallpaper vapors rather than on purpose. It's possible that the wallpaper wasn't properly ventilated, that it leached arsenic into Napoleon's room, and that he absorbed enough toxins through his skin to cause death. Arsenic can also be ingested accidentally by eating or drinking after contact with contaminated hands. Professor Ward says that he thinks the arsenic hypothesis explains all of the evidence and obviates the need for other explanations. However, there's another school of thought that blames Napoleon's deterioration on his improper incarceration. Many argue that the stress of living under such close watch undermined his already fragile health. This is supported by Napoleon's close attendants, who complained that the ex-emperor was being mistreated. Moreover, there were reports from Napoleon's physicians detailing his ailments, which paint a picture of a man whose health was quickly deteriorating. In a letter dated November 1818, Dr. Francesco Antimacchi wrote, "The state of his health is extremely bad, and his disease continues to make daily progress. His stomach is completely ulcerated, and he suffers horribly from indigestion. His nights are sleepless, and he is constantly subject to fits of coughing." Clearly, Napoleon was unwell. The question is, did someone expedite his demise? There are several theories about who might have wanted Napoleon dead, and how they might have done it. The most popular theory is that the British were behind the poisoning. According to this account, the British government decided that Napoleon had outlived his usefulness, and ordered that he be assassinated. This may sound conspiratorial, but remember that the British government had significant influence over Napoleon's life and death. They controlled where he lived, what he ate, and who he interacted with. It's entirely plausible that the British could have ensured that he didn't leave Saint Helena alive. However, there are problems with this theory. First, there's no clear motive for killing Napoleon. If the aim was to get rid of a troublesome exile, it seems that keeping him on Saint Helena was already effective enough. Second, there's no concrete evidence of British involvement in the poisoning. Remember that the hair samples analyzed for arsenic were taken from Napoleon's corpse, which means that contamination after death cannot be ruled out. Third, even if the British wanted Napoleon dead, there are other ways they could have done it. Why use arsenic when a simple blunt force injury would have done the job? Killing Napoleon would have been a huge international incident, whereas allowing him to die of natural causes did not. Another theory is that Napoleon was poisoned by members of his own entourage. Perhaps they slipped arsenic into his food or drink on purpose or accidentally through contaminated hands. Certainly, those closest to Napoleon reported his condition worsening after his arrival in Saint Helena. However, there's no proof that any of them were capable of such treachery. Today, Napoleon rests under a grand tomb in Les Invalides in Paris. Controversy over what really killed him persists. Did Napoleon eat his last meal poisoned? It's impossible to say for sure, but the amount of arsenic found in his hair does seem to support the idea that it was murder. Most historians agree that Napoleon's health was compromised by his incarceration on Saint Helena, but that doesn't preclude the possibility that he was deliberately poisoned. Who did it is less important than the fact that there was someone, somewhere, an actor or actors, willing to bet against his survival. As Napoleon himself said in his memoirs, "I have been the victim of so many conspiracies that I cease to fear even those which were impossible." The enigma of Napoleon's death is yet another example of how the past is never as simple as it seems. Thank you so much for watching. What do you think? Was Napoleon Bonaparte poisoned, or did he die of cancer? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media. We'll see you next time.